Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the educational session number 10, which will be building the bulletproof business case. My name's Chris Ehinger. I am a mobility account manager with AT&T, and I will be kicking things off for us today. First of all, thank you all so much for coming to join our session here. I hope you find it very informative, and I hope we have enough time at the end here to get any questions you have answered. If we do run out of time, please feel free to find myself or any of my peers at the end of the presentation. We'd be more than happy to take any additional questions you have offline. So what do we hope to accomplish today? Right up on the screen here, you'll see our session objectives. What we want to be able to do is essentially the goal is showing you how to establish fact-based financial justification. So basically, we want to be able to show you how to look at your IT processes in your organization, look at the IT investments you're making, or look at how to identify the IT investments you want to make, and how to put some hard dollars and cents behind not just things like cutting expenses, but things like increasing productivity, improving the image of your agency, making sure that things remain secure, making sure that things remain stable and safe. So we're going to look at a couple of different categories here when you look at a return on investment on the areas that you want to analyze. Some things to consider. Making sure that we have champions at the program and line of business level. What that means is not just in the actual IT organization itself, but making sure that you have people that are actually involved in the projects that you're working on, working hand in hand with IT to understand the kind of impact that the technology you want to leverage will have on that particular process. We want to make sure that we're uncovering antiquated processes. So one example we're going to give you today is we're going to look at paper forms as an example. You know, is there a way that we can take that out of your process, make it electronic? What are the kind of benefits that you can see when you do something that seems relatively simple but can have a really large impact on your organization? We're basically going to make sure that we show you how to leverage these new technologies to garner immediate ROI from any kind of equipment purchase you make. So one of the things at AT&T that we see a lot of is we have a lot of customers that go out and they'll buy large quantities of smartphones, whether they be iPhones, Blackberries, Androids, for example, and the primary use for those is to make phone calls, to text people, and to look at your email. And while those are all very helpful things and they help our employees communicate and be productive, you're using that device for maybe 5 to 10% of its total capability. So what we're going to do today is expand upon what's really possible in the realm of mobility and the impact it can have on your business. We're also going to share a case study with you today. We have one from the county of San Diego, a success story that they have and the kind of ROI that they look to generate to justify the deployment they did. So to give you a real world example. I'm joined here today with Juan, an AT&T mobility application consultant, and Mike Plasko from Ecosystems. And Ecosystems is a company that manages the AT&T Value Management Office, so they specialize in helping us work with our customers to generate return on investment. So I'm really quickly going to give them both a chance to come up and just do a brief introduction, and then we'll move forward.
Great, thanks Chris. I'll start. My name is Mike Plasko. I work for Ecosystems, a partner working with AT&T, and we really specialize in not specific solutions, specific technologies, but just how can we help organizations understand and logically prioritize IT investments based on the return you'll get back. And so when I come up to the stage after Chris's portion, I'll be going through that methodology and how can we anticipate business impact up front, and just as important, how can we follow it in an ongoing cadence, ongoing business review to make sure that that benefit is recognized.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. My name is Juan. I'm a mobile applications consultant for AT&T. I am the only mobile applications consultant for the state of California, so if you work for a California state agency, I'm your point man there. My job is really to help state agencies develop mobile applications from scratch, as well as connect them with our 200+ partners that we have that have built, packaged, and modular type mobile applications that you can use in your business case. And I'll be the John Madden of the session today, just a color guy, and finishing up with a business case, a successful business case that we did, that Chris mentioned, for the county of San Diego. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Juan. Thanks, Mike. So the session agenda for today, the first thing we're going to talk about is IT perception and the structure of IT today. we're going to look at the actual methodology and the tools for creating an ROI in a business case, and that's something that Mike is going to cover with us. As Juan mentioned, we're going to go over a case study and a success story, and then hopefully we'll have enough time at the end here to get any questions you might have answered. So to start off, I want to ask you all just to think about this particular question. If you had to be honest with yourself, how is IT perceived in your agency today? And typically when I ask customers this question, I get two answers. They're looked at as the people who are in the back office, that they give you a laptop and a cell phone when you first start out, and you call them when something's broken and you yell at them because things don't work. You know, that's one particular view that people have. The other view, and what I encourage us to look at today, is a trusted partner in your organization that is there to show you and educate you how to leverage technology to better do your job or to make your job easier. So this is what we see when we look at IT today, typically in any organization. You see organizations that operate in silos, where you have IT off on their own, they make their decisions, they do what they think is best for the business. You have your program managers who do what they think is best. You have HR, you have legal, regulatory, finance, for example, and nobody's really talking. They're all operating in their own little silos, and nobody's collaborating, nobody's working together. And this is very, very typical of corporate America today. This is very typical of a lot of clients that I work with. And when we're looking at return on investment, in order to really, truly get that technology ROI that you're looking for, you need to work together. So in this particular model, one of the things that we're going to talk about today is having business unit leaders or business unit champions that work directly with each of your programs or different segments within your organization. If you have somebody in IT that is directly aligned with those particular business units, you'll have somebody that really understands what is it that this business unit does on a daily basis. What is a day in the life like for a worker in this particular area? And when you understand that, then when you're starting and you're taking all that knowledge you have about all the different technologies that are out there today, you can say, okay, hey, here's a good application, or here's what we can improve, here's how we might be able to use X, whatever X might be. It's really, really critical for the business units and the IT leaders to collaborate in an organization if you really want to get a successful return on investment. Because one of the things that we see all too many times is, they'll buy a bunch of equipment, you'll integrate a solution, and you'll do it without actually knowing what it is that that particular unit is doing on a daily basis, and you don't get the full ROI, you don't get the full adoption of the solution that you're putting in place because you don't have any buy-in. So that's something that we want to make sure that we do when we're looking at getting the full return on investment. A few areas that I touched on earlier here, and this is how we will categorize different areas to find ROI today, is a model we call PEERS. PEERS stands for productivity. So that one's pretty obvious, making your workers more productive. Image, what is the agency image, both internally to your respective peers and to the public. Expenses. Obviously, we want to make sure that things that we're implementing do have some kind of a way to actually reduce your overall expense. Revenue. If you're a revenue generating agency, how can we find ways to either process more transactions on a daily basis or potentially impact revenue from that perspective? And then safety, security, and stability. Safety, that could be public safety. Maybe we develop an application that helps keep the public safe by giving them alerts. Employee safety. Security, from that perspective, we look at it from a data loss standpoint. How do we make sure that the information we're passing through our technology stays secure? And stability, how do we maintain the stability of the actual overall agency? So with the models that we've looked at, what we're really looking to do here is, we encourage you to look at a shift in the perception of IT. We want IT to be seen as not just the people that issue our technology, but the people that really work with us to help us do our jobs better, and they want to make life easier for us and help us get a better ROI that's better for the agency. So another thing to think about here, as IT professionals, how are you leveraging technology to create value, or if applicable, generate more revenue for your agency? Imagine the impact. So I've put just a couple examples up here just to provoke some thought before Mike gets started here. If we had an application that allowed a citizen to fill out the necessary forms before they arrived, what areas of your business would that impact if they didn't have to come in, fill it out on paper, have somebody re-enter it, and do processing times for that? Few that I came up with here, obviously productivity, expenses, revenue, and security. And people very often ask me, why security? Well, if you have personal information or sensitive information on a form, now you've got to destroy it. An application that warns citizens of public safety hazards using geolocation. As a California citizen, if I open up my smartphone and I get a push notification that there's a wildfire near my home, or there's evacuation plan in the event of a disaster, those sorts of things help me make sure that I'm safe. What does that impact? Well, that impacts my personal safety, obviously. It impacts the image of the organization. It shows me that my government agencies are really, truly looking out for my best interest and trying to keep me safe as a citizen. An application that allows auditors to fill out forms electronically. Same principles apply as the first example here. Productivity, expenses, revenue, and security. We're getting rid of those paper forms. We're increasing the speed that the data is transmitted into the back end, and we're reducing errors, and Mike will touch more on that particular process later. I mean, the possibilities here are endless, and it really comes down to how do you assign the value? What areas do you look at to assign the value? What formulas do you look at to make sure that we can actually write a compelling business case to justify what it is we want to do in IT? And that's where Mike comes in. So Mike, if you'd like to come up and join us here, he's going to show you how we assign that value.
All right, thank you, Chris. So again, my name's Mike Plasko. I head the product management and what we call the value engineering teams for ecosystems. We are a company in simple terms that we help organizations understand the return and the business impact of IT investments. And that, we found in our experience in doing this, there's 3 core requirements or components to an effective program. One is around the people, and so we have a dedicated team that are called value engineers. And they work with the organization, they work with third-party objective reports, they work with industry benchmarks, all in the purpose of how do we take something like cost savings, price of A versus price of B, that's very easy. But what happens when it's mitigating a certain type of risk, mitigating the likelihood of a certain security incident, improving the safety of your employees? So when it gets into more challenging considerations like that, yet needing to bring everything down to the same metric, we want to monetize. We want to be able to put everything on a board and talk in the language of business. And that's where the value engineering comes in. The process, and I'll be going through each of these in live examples. The process is, what is the methodology? First, from upfront anticipating the business impact of IT investments, but discussing value and auditing business impact, that can't be a one-time conversation. There needs to be a regular cadence, and there needs to be accountability. If a certain project is approved because of anticipated benefits, what are the real controls that you have in place to make sure that that value is recognized? And we'll be going through examples of that. And then final is the platform, and obviously the software vehicle that helps facilitate the overall process. So, ecosystems in the industry, these are the program offices that we provide. We are now actively partnering with AT&T specifically around mobility and putting in program offices and methodologies to help organizations, make sure they understand their return on a mobility investment before they would ever, allocate the actual funds. ROI. Financial gain versus the funds invested, pretty straightforward calculation. And but what we'll go through now is, ROI has a very much of a science, a numbers feel, but in reality, there's some art to it. Now, I read an interesting study. There's a book called Made to Stick, and it's about communication effectiveness. And what it does is it tracks different ideas and how those ideas can survive or die strictly on the efficacy and how it's communicated. And in the book, there's a study done at Stanford where they took a group of people, I think 25 on each side, and said, you're going to be what we're calling the tappers. And the tappers are supposed to think of a song in their head, and they're given the song, Happy Birthday to You, ABC song, very, very ubiquitous, well-known songs. And they're supposed to think the song in their head and then tap it out. But they're keeping the song in their head. The other half of the group are the listeners. And they just hear the taps on the table, and they have to be able to discern what the song is and write it down. And of 120 songs, how many do you think they got right? 3. So it was 1 out of 40 that they got right. But more interesting is when they went to the tappers first and said, how many do you think they got right? They said, probably 1 out of 2. And so it went from a 1 out of 2, but in reality it was a 1 out of 40. And I thought it was interesting in that if you overlay it to how you look at value, I mean, it's similar. You have someone with a hardware focus, IT, saying our servers are antiquated and we need new servers. That's not enough to be actionable to other parts of the business. Whereas you could have a CFO talking about EBITDA, cash flow, and likewise, it's something that's not interpretable by others. And so the art of this process is how do we create a repeatable, scalable way that we can go out to the people most knowledgeable about the potential projects, the potential investments, get information directly from them, but have that provided centrally so it's actionable and it's interpretable by those centrally who need to make the decision if it's going to be an investment or not, who need to allocate across all the potential projects. And that's what we're going to go through is how do we create that repeatable, scalable process to get the most credible information and have that interpreted, truly understood, the potential business impact on a central basis. And we're going to go through just three simple steps. The first one is around exploring options. And so, maybe there's field service automation or emergency response or fleet tracking or criminal or DMV record retrieval for mobile devices. There's a lot of potential initiatives in which you could invest. And now the question is, how do we determine which ones? And so in the explore options, we just want to nominate candidates directionally. If we look across things like productivity and costs and risk and sustainability, and let's get just a directional assessment on where we may get the best returns. And so what I'm going to do now is actually toggle over to the software platform. So now we're getting into the platform that's leveraged in order to support these different stages of the IT investment lifecycle. The first example, and Chris talked about these different categories: productivity, image, expenses, revenue, safety. Very common categories. It's configurable. So as we work with different organizations, if they have current protocols in place, that the actual categories we use can change, but this is a very common best practice template as a launch point. And I'll start with a very straightforward, where let's look at expenses. So this is not the expense of the new solution. Let's look at our existing environment, and we can see here, well, based on what we're paying on our voice service now, and data service, and messaging service, and the data card service, these are the current expenses. Whereas there's an option to go with a different mobile device that enables tethering. So the data card is no longer needed, and so this would be the 2B, or looking forward, what the ongoing service charges would be. And then the platform very easily, then it says, okay, well, we can see here are the benefits as far as the current expenses that are going to be removed. Here are the new costs that would be introduced, and we can see very clearly, over $120,000 a year or so. And we can change to different horizons. What would that cumulative impact be over 5 years? And we can determine, well, now we're over $500,000. But again, more straightforward as far as focusing on the cost part of the argument. If I return to benefits, and now I go into productivity, and again, the focus of this is not this to be a free-form canvas for everybody, but now for this to be the discipline structure that anybody nominating a potential investment has to go through this process. So productivity, who are potential users of this? And what are activities they're doing it could streamline? Perhaps there's mobile users who are filling out a manual timesheet, and there's 125 on them. Any of these I could click on and change. And you'll notice we can have baked-in options where we can say, all right, we have mobile users, we have emergency response teams, we have police officers. So we could hardwire it to have a fixed set of potential users to really normalize what we get from all the other inputs, or give them the flexibility to add a new one. That is also an option. As well as activities, timesheet completion. So baked in intelligent start points, but the ability to define new ones as needed. But then getting into the balance. Well, how many individuals are there? How often are they doing it? How long is it taking per week? What's their rate? And the time reduction. So now, is this something that we can completely automate to where it takes no time? That may be a little aggressive. But more realistically, if it's something where they are filling out a paper form, perhaps 75% of that we can alleviate, and now we can see, now we have over $500,000 in annual savings. And so now as I go back to my summary, now you can see the cumulative is much more, because now in just cost savings, we also have productivity. I won't go through each category, given the time for the session, but again, just a feel for the stepwise discipline structure that the teams that are forced to exercise their way through. Image, maybe there's the saving of paper reams, because we're going from a manual paper process, and how many reams a year now, and how much per ream, and what if we can reduce the actual consumption by, what if we can take a paper process and completely make it, webify it, make it a web form. So again, just to illustrate this concept, very directional, but still it's starting to force everybody into a similar structure. So it puts us in a state, in a perspective where we can start to rationalize and look at directional impact across potential initiatives. Safety, security, risk. Again, different examples. Maybe it's avoiding potential fines. Maybe it's, I read an article yesterday around an incident in Texas where the names and social security numbers of teachers involved in a pension fund was put online and unencrypted for a year, and there's a class action suit, $1,000 per name that was introduced. So, again, it's one of the areas, it's not the easiest to quantify, but there are benchmarks that can help you, start to directionally equate the impact. I'm going to come back to the presentation, and we're going to go to that second stage. So in this first one, it was more directional. Let's nominate the potential projects. Now the next step is, now we're going to dig in a little more, and we're going to try and get a little more literal on quantifying the impact, and really take that information we're getting from these many sources. And something I didn't highlight, which I should, is that directly from the platform, then there's the opportunity to share it. So everyone centrally, you can share it with coworkers to collaborate on the assumptions, and also share it centrally as we head into phase 2, where we need to have vision to all of the the directional business cases around the potential projects. In the quantify impact, this is where we're really looking to validate the initial findings. And we're gonna look to assign responsibility for gathering and validating inputs to those individuals most knowledgeable. We're going to determine, is it ROI? Is it total cost of ownership? Is it payback period? We're going to get a little more specific on the criteria that's going to be used to determine if we make an investment or not. And so as I go to kind of stage 2 of the platform, we can see for those potential projects that were introduced, and the potential impact across different benefit categories, and maybe just raw expenses is really my hot button. And so I want to kind of look across projects and see which one is providing the most benefit there. Or alternatively, maybe it's productivity and expenses. So this ability to kind of toggle on and off, to be able to see kind of net impact versus being a little more surgical and focusing on key hot button areas. But this gives you a feel for this kind of crucible as we start to gather the inputs from the potential projects. Another key one is benefit timing. And this illustrates why it's not so easy as to say, all right, this project has an annual benefit of X. Because the speed with which it can come to fruition is going to be critical in determining if it is actually the project that gives the highest return. And so as we look at the field services project with the highest potential annual return, well, that's assuming it could give value on day one. What if actually the benefits for that project aren't going to be recognized starting until month 6, and it's actually going to be at the end of 2 years where we recognize the full benefit? Whereas around the mobile access of DMV and criminal records, that's something kind of impact day 1, and in 4 months we'll be fully live. And now I'll activate kind of the cumulative return. And so you can see that now if we look at the cumulative return, that the second project actually gives us the highest return as we look over the next 36 months. But again, just to highlight it, and maybe there's a risk consideration. Maybe there's a technical risk. Maybe there's the risk of the solvency of the vendor who's providing the solution. Maybe there's a risk as far as the degree to which the users will adopt the new technology. And again, a lot of this, more than the numbers, it's about the conversation. And let's just make sure every project before it goes in, where at least everyone's looking at that slider and exercising all the ways in which the existence or lack thereof around risk. all for the interest in putting a disciplined way in how IT budgets are prioritized and invested. And then the final, summary views across different projects, and it could be net present value or ROI or payback period. But really at this stage, the key dynamic is digging in a little more and getting more of a group consensus and a little more holistic on assessing the potential projects and investments before ultimately making a decision. And then the final stage of the process is around tracking results. And it's a very simple question that I'm always surprised at by the lack of an answer, is that even after an investment is made, what determines success? How will you know in 3 months from now, 6 months, 12 months, how will you know if that was a good investment or not? And well, it was deployed. It's out there. So many licenses were used. It's out there. And obviously that's not the best practice. And it's not, you want an environment of accountability in that there's not people just up front talking about the potential value, but there's skin in the game as far as how it's going to be tracked ongoing. And so, a final part to the platform, but a key part is that ongoing cadence, and maybe around reducing costs. We never want to talk about projects in terms of, all right, well, tethering to replace data cards. That yes, there are projects that we're doing, but it maps back to a higher priority, like reducing costs, improving productivity, protecting the environment. And so what this part of the platform does is it forces everyone to say, what are the strategic priorities we care about as a company? And if these projects can't map back to one of these, then they're not aligned. And so that's a red flag, at the beginning, if we're looking at the projects and have a hard time mapping it back up to different levels as far as strategic priorities and then the initiatives within those. But first and foremost is let's make sure that each project is relevant based on the organization's priorities. Then the second is to say, all right, it's relevant, but then how do we know if we're winning or losing? Is it just how many data cards have been retired from the field? Is it, are we tracking the adoption of the timesheet management system? Are we tracking, usage quarter to quarter on the usage of the mobile access to DMV records by officers in the field? Again, just examples, but another part where the platform, it has the placeholder, and it forces you and your teams to have the conversation to say, guys, what is success going to be when we sit down here every quarter to review the impact of this program? User experience, the stability of it, the technical support. Those could be other ways where, looking to track the program impact, and, everyone wants to treat their users like customers. And so that's another common component. And by the way, everything here in the platform is point-click as far as how it's created. And that if in sitting down with maybe the CTO introduces a new priority, or maybe we want to have our own folder for the CTO, and we know his or her specific priorities, and maybe it is that we're kind of merging IT systems, and we need to consolidate. And this is something, a hot button for the CTO. And I just show it as an example of to say, all right, now we've created a new folder, we know their priority. And then as you sit down internally, you sit with procurement, you sit with your management, and you want to show how the programs are doing. Well, then if I'm talking to the CTO, let's take the other considerations out. I want to that's my audience, that's the relevant conversation, and I haven't defined any metrics yet for the CTO, but it just illustrates this concept. I want one view of everything happening across the organization. But that said, I don't want to dilute or pollute the experience for everybody. So allow me to selectively go in and present the program impact and findings in a way that I know is relevant and meaningful to my immediate audience. Program updates, another type of deployment status, learnings and recommendations, next steps, but just another common protocol that's included within this best practice process. So with that, I'll come back to the presentation, and that's really the core of what I wanted to go through. Obviously a quick tour, but hopefully it's tangible. This concept of putting the structure together so that everybody is thinking of the potential impact in common terms, because only then can we look to prioritize and filter and make actionable decisions as the inputs come in from different parties within the field. So with that, I'm going to have Juan come up and talk about a case study.
Thanks, Mike. I think it's important to reiterate the software that Mike was just showing you is free to use. AT&T hired Mike's company and spent a lot of time and money and resources putting this software together. And when Chris and I came across it, we loved it. We loved the idea of sitting down with customers for particular projects. And we talked a lot about the value of deciding whether you want to go with a project or not, and the productivity, efficiency, image, I think is huge with government. But also, you get to put in numbers, soft cost numbers as well. So you get to look at the other side of things to say, yeah, the dollars might make sense, but there's soft initiatives here as well. There's team resources that internally we need to devote to that. Chris and I hear those things all the time. So sometimes it's good to have those conversations to say, and we let you as the customer plug in whatever number you see fit, and then look at those graphs that we're looking at, and then dump all of those graphs into presentation or PowerPoint materials if you need to have that same presentation or discussion with your customers as well. Because ultimately, we do a better job at AT&T if we can go back to you 6 months later after a project and say, hey, we were off our numbers a little bit. This turned out to be a much better project than what we first thought it was, and it was extremely successful. And that's typically how you get your names in lights and case studies done, like the one I'm about to show you. So just to kind of set the stage here, I'm going to do my tapping, as Mike mentioned. So within the recent time frame, who here's been on an important wireless call and had the phone drop and had to reconnect that call? And can I see an example of some of the faces you made when that happens? That's a frustrating experience, and certainly, yeah, I've came pretty close to throwing my phone out the window myself, and I work for the company that supports that network for sure. So how long does it usually take for you to get that call back and back into flow and say, I apologize, I'm in a bad coverage area, you're back together within probably 20, 30 seconds, right? Yet you're still kind of frustrated about it. More than that? Okay. So how long before you're back on the phone?
I'd say it's at least 5 minutes before you got things moving.
5 minutes on average from a dropped call to get back going again? Okay. So who here has the opportunity to work from home from time to time and gets to VPN and access? Very good. Who here's had that same experience, not necessarily with the dropped call, but now your VPN goes down or you lose Wi-Fi access? All right. How long before you lose your VPN and you're working in applications, how long before you're connected back and working again, would you say? Is it more or less than the phone call? More, right? So you set the VPN up. What I typically do is reboot the whole laptop and then go make myself a cup of coffee, and I'm lucky if I'm back to the laptop within 10 minutes, and then I still have to do, connect to all the applications and pray to God that the stuff that I was working on didn't all get lost, right? So just to kind of set the stage, this is one of the products that I'm the biggest fan of, and so is the County of San Diego as far as the case study goes. And it's essentially, their particular issue was that similar experience that you have when you're working from home and your VPN drops, only their users were in the field. They were mobile users, caseworkers, and people that were carrying laptops around from meeting to meeting, constantly moving and using Wi-Fi networks and laptop cards to connect, but always having that same process happen where they'd lose the VPN connection. The VPN was there. A lot of us use Cisco, other solutions like that, but those VPN solutions are developed more for somebody sitting at home, and even then we admit that those don't always work, right? So they had a lot of complaints and problems with that, and just major productivity and inefficiency issues with the folks in the field, to the point where most of their, when they did the analysis, a lot of them weren't even carrying their laptops to these meetings. They were writing hand notes, coming back at the end of the day, or going back in at the end of the day and inputting the data that they were capturing while they were in the field. We have a bunch of partners and solutions. There's more than just one, that address this particular issue specifically for the mobile worker that's carrying around the laptop, and now it's obviously emerging into the tablet space as well for folks that are in the field accessing these applications, where essentially there's software that you load on the device. You don't need the Cisco solution anymore. You can use that for the folks that are a little more less mobile, I should say. But you have a solution where the software fools the back-end systems and applications into thinking that you're still connected. And your laptop thinks it's still connected, essentially. And this isn't new software. The law enforcement CHP, if you talk to any police officer that's driving around with an MDC in their car, one of those laptops you see in the police vehicles, imagine those guys and the applications they're accessing while they're moving from Wi-Fi network to carrier network to no network whatsoever and then back again. I had an interview with a CHP officer, and he says when he gets in his car in the morning, it takes him 25 minutes to log in. He sits in the parking lot for 25 minutes getting that laptop up. Imagine if he had to do that every time a VPN connection was dropped. So what the County of San Diego did is took a look at this from a productivity and efficiency standpoint, using the same sort of rationale that Mike just mentioned, and did a proof of concept. And they took 25 caseworkers that were traveling around, and they said, here, try this software on your laptop. And they measured how many actual visits they were able to do. They were able to take the increase in those visits, drop them into a proof of concept, from the proof of concept, drop them into an ROI tool, similar to the one that, just the same logic that Mike just mentioned, and were able to put a case study around it to the point where they could now quantify, and this is really the hardest thing, the VPN software that we're using here might, from a dollars perspective, apples to apples comparison might be considerably more than the Cisco VPN software that they're using at the time. But when you look at the increase in efficiency and productivity, not to mention, I don't know if you can even quantify this, but the joy of the workers they're using these tools compared to what they were doing before, and the frustration and wanting to jump off a bridge half the time, there was a significant gain there to the point, and really the way we've been measuring success up until now, up until we've used these ROI and analytical tools, is just the growth of the licenses, right? So this started out as a small group within the County of San Diego caseworkers, and it's rolled into to 1,300 software licenses. So now the majority of the people that are in the field for the County of San Diego are using tools like this, so that when they get to a meeting, they hit power or they put their laptop in sleep, they flip that up, and they're at the exact same place they left before. The back-end applications think that the user's been connected the whole time, even though the laptop's been in a bag traveling across the county, which I didn't know this, but found out County of San Diego is bigger than the state of Delaware. So there's a lot of hills and desert areas there where there is no coverage, obviously. And so now they're able to open that laptop, complete the work that they were doing when they left, save that work, have that work be sent wirelessly back to a database somewhere, and in some cases, becomes valuable where you don't have particular security type data on your laptop, while and leave that up to being stolen out of a car or something like that. So, just one example. I liked it in this case because it really it was something where the county had to spend a little bit more money to put this solution in place than they were doing before, but when they put the productivity and efficiency proof of concept together, it became a no-brainer, and it rolled downhill from there, improving the way the folks in the field were doing their job. Great, well, thank you all for coming.
Just going to thank you all again for coming, and we do have up next, Kofex will be in this room talking about extending business process management to mobile devices, so it touches a lot on what we talked about from an ROI standpoint, so stay tuned for that.